There is a map inside you that no one ever taught you to read, not because it doesn't matter, but because it matters too much. That map is your spine. But it's not just a stack of bones, it's a cosmic interface, a living conduit between energy and matter, between the earth beneath your feet and the infinite above your crown. You've seen it symbolized: the serpent coiled at the base, the staff of Hermes, the chakras rising in sequence. You've heard fragments of it: Kundalini, prana, chi, but no one ever told you the whole story. Because the truth is, your spine is not just a structure, it's a circuit. An ancient, intelligent system designed to unlock awareness, channel force, and connect you directly to source consciousness. And the moment that force begins to rise, you change. Not metaphorically, literally. Your perception widens, your intuition sharpens, your emotional body clears, your frequency reorganizes. So why don't we learn this in school? Why isn't every child taught how to breathe with their spine? Move with intention, awaken the dormant currents that live inside them. Because that knowledge has been censored, not by mistake, but by design. The mystics knew it, the yogis preserved it, the hermetics encoded it, and the systems of power, they buried it. Because a human who activates the spine's energy map becomes sovereign, unprogrammable, unshakable, undiverted. This isn't spiritual fluff, it's energetic anatomy. Let's break it down. At the base of your spine lies Kundalini, coiled like a serpent, waiting. It's not just energy, it's intelligence, creative, life-shaping, disruptive, cleansing. And when it moves, it doesn't just bring bliss, it brings truth. Truth about who you are, truth about what you've suppressed, truth about how much you've forgotten. As it climbs the spine, it passes through gates, nodes of transformation known as chakras, glands, or plexuses, depending on the tradition. Each one holds memory. Each one holds trauma. Each one holds potential. But if those gates are blocked by fear, by habits, by shame, the energy can't rise. It stays locked. You stay dormant. And that's exactly what they want. Because once it rises, you stop looking outward for validation. You stop numbing. You stop obeying. You begin to feel your own center. And a centered human cannot be manipulated. The question is, what would happen if you became aware of this map again? What would happen if, instead of ignoring your spine, you listened to it? The ancients believed that every part of the universe was mirrored inside the body, that the stars had bones, the galaxies had flow, and the divine lived in structure. Your spine wasn't a side effect of evolution, it was a design feature to hold the current of consciousness itself. And the fact that almost no one talks about that tells you everything. They didn't just hide the map, they rewrote the entire landscape. Because when you understand the spine as an energetic ladder, something else becomes clear. You were designed to ascend, not metaphorically, energetically, neurologically, spiritually. Each vertebra, each chakra, each point along that vertical channel corresponds to stages of consciousness, layers of memory, gateways of power. And when you start to activate those gates, systematically, intentionally, you don't just feel better. You become sovereign. You no longer respond from trauma. You no longer depend on external rules. You begin to trust the architecture inside your own body. But here's the thing, systems of control can't coexist with sovereign humans. So what did they do? They inverted the ladder. They taught you to live horizontally, to chase, to consume, to compare. Everything became outward, forward, away. They gave you religion that pointed up, but never in. Science that explained everything except consciousness. Medicine that treated symptoms but ignored the signal. They handed you chairs that collapsed your spine. They created schools that overfed your mind but ignored your breath. They sold you entertainment that scattered your awareness and dulled your internal rhythm. And they made sure you never heard of what was rising silently in the East. Because while the West was building empires, the yogis were mapping the inner sky. They discovered that when you breathe with presence and precision, the energy in the spine begins to stir. When you move with awareness, dormant circuits light up. When you direct your attention inward, not in escape, but in precision, you awaken the ancient current within. They called it Kundalini. But it wasn't just a yoga thing. The Kabbalists knew it. The Taoists practiced it. The mystics, the Gnostics, the Sufis, all hinted at it. Different symbols, same truth. The body is a temple, the spine is the altar, and the energy is the fire. So why didn't they teach you that? Because fire transforms, fire reveals, fire burns illusions. A human with an active spine becomes a transmitter, not just a receiver. You don't just absorb energy, you radiate. You don't just follow teachings, you receive downloads. You don't just experience emotion, you transmute it. And that kind of human can't be sold to, can't be bought, can't be broken. So they censored the fire. They ridiculed the practices. They reduced the language. They trained you to ignore your body, fear your feelings, and disconnect from the core of your own vertical channel. And the result? A world full of smart minds, living in collapsed bodies. But you're waking up. You're starting to feel it. The pressure, the tension, the hum. Not random discomfort. Signals. The map is waking up. And the question is, will you walk the path it's showing you? It begins at the base, not with the mind, not with visions, not with ideas, but with the root, the foundation of your energetic body, the gatekeeper of everything that rises. This is where the serpent sleeps, coiled in silence, waiting for your attention. They called it Kundalini, the life force, the sleeping fire, the sacred voltage of evolution. And contrary to what you've been told, awakening this energy isn't about force. It's about permission. Permission to feel what you've avoided, to sit in what's uncomfortable, to breathe through what scares you, because the root holds everything you were taught to fear. Survival, desire, anger, shame, power. So most people never go there. They bypass, they chase the light, they talk of chakras and mantras and visions, but ignore the knots at the bottom. And here's the cosmic joke. You can't rise until you ground. Your energy won't move upward until you reclaim what you buried downward. The trauma, the conditioning, the inherited beliefs stored in the tissues of your hips, your tailbone, your gut. This isn't metaphor, it's somatic reality. Your spine isn't a theory, it's a gate. And when you finally sit with it, long enough, quietly enough, the gate begins to shift. You'll feel heat, maybe pulsing, maybe memory, but above all, you'll feel something waking up. And that's when your mind will try to stop you. It'll flood you with noise, distractions, urges, because your ego knows, once this force rises, it's no longer in control. This is where you breathe. Deep, slow, present, because the breath is the key. Each inhale moves energy, each exhale clears blockage, each still moment becomes a signal, telling your system, it's safe to rise now. And if you stay with it, your awareness shifts. You stop identifying with thought. You start feeling from the spine up, not just from the head down. You begin to walk, speak, decide from your center. And that center is magnetic, because real power doesn't need volume. It doesn't chase, it doesn't push, it pulls. Your energy field begins to organize. People notice. You enter a room and the space shifts, because your field is broadcasting coherence, not chaos. That's the beginning of spiritual authority, not the kind that dominates, the kind that radiates. If this resonates, subscribe and hit the bell. This isn't entertainment. This is your nervous system remembering its design. And here's the truth. What they called spiritual awakening was never about the mind. It starts in your spine, with your breath, with your choice to stop running from your own fire. So the question is, what have you locked at the base of your being, and are you finally ready to let it rise? The moment you unlock the root, the current stirs, subtle at first, a flicker, a hum, a pressure, but it's real. And now it begins to rise. You're not imagining this. You're not fantasizing some mystical illusion. You're activating the biological interface of your soul. From the root, the energy climbs into the sacral region, your center of emotion, sexuality, and creative life force. And this is where most people get stuck, because this center doesn't just hold pleasure. It holds every unprocessed emotion you've ever swallowed, every desire you suppressed to be acceptable, every boundary you failed to hold. The sacral isn't just about passion, it's about permission. Permission to feel deeply, to create without apology, to experience pleasure without guilt, to exist in a body that's awake, not ashamed. But they taught you to fear this center, that pleasure was sinful, that emotion was weakness, that desire was dangerous. And so, most people stay numb, but numbness isn't peace, it's protection from energy you were never taught to hold. Now you're reclaiming it. And as you do, the energy climbs higher to the solar plexus, your will center. This is where the fire builds, your sense of identity, your drive, your ability to say, "This is who I am." But if that center is blocked, you doubt, you hesitate, you leak power into people-pleasing, control, procrastination. The system loves when this center stays weak, because without a strong core, you can be manipulated emotionally, mentally, socially. But when energy begins to circulate freely through your lower three centers, something incredible happens. You stabilize. You're no longer trying to transcend your humanness. You're integrating it. And in that integration, your frequency begins to reorganize. You begin speaking differently, less noise, more truth. You feel safer in silence. You become unavailable to anything that's out of alignment. Jobs, relationships, habits. That's when you know the energy is preparing to rise into the heart. And the heart is a bridge between lower and upper, matter and spirit, wound and wisdom. But you can't reach that bridge if you've bypassed the climb. And you can't climb with willpower alone. You have to surrender. Not to a guru, not to a path, but to the intelligence already alive inside you. That's the ancient map. Not something you learn, something you remember. It's always been there, etched into your fascia, your spine, your nervous system. The only reason you haven't seen it is because you were trained to look everywhere else. When the energy reaches your heart, the game changes. This isn't just another chakra. This is the pivot point. The bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. Most people try to skip here. They want the love, the compassion, the higher frequency. But the heart isn't a lounge, it's a gate. And it only opens when your lower centers are honored, not bypassed. Because a heart without a grounded root is just a fantasy. A heart without emotional truth is just performance. A heart without a strong core is just leaky compassion. And that's how lightworkers get drained. But when the current rises naturally, through breath, presence, and awareness, the heart awakens in a different way. You don't just feel more, you transmit coherence. Science is just catching up to this. The HeartMath Institute discovered that your heart emits an electromagnetic field stronger than your brain's, by a factor of over 5,000. Your heart is a transmitter. When aligned, it broadcasts order into chaos. It calibrates the energy around you. It literally entrains other nervous systems. This isn't poetry. This is bioenergetics. So when Kundalini hits the heart, your body doesn't just heal. Your field reorganizes. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to manifest, but because your energy is finally speaking the language of truth. And from the heart, the energy climbs into the throat. This is where many freeze, not because they can't speak, but because their voice was trained to betray their truth. The throat holds the residue of lifetimes of silencing, not just personal shame, but ancestral programming, cultural suppression. But when this center activates, your voice comes online, and not just your speech, your frequency. Your tone changes. You don't just talk, you vibrate. Your words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're real. And from here, the energy rises again, into the third eye. This is where perception shifts, but not in the mystical, overhyped, psychedelic way people expect. True third eye activation doesn't explode, it refines. You start to see through words, through appearances, through manipulation. You feel the resonance of truth and the hollow tone of everything that isn't. And you don't need proof, you just know. Because this isn't imagination, it's restoration. You're not becoming something new. You're remembering what your system was always built to do. You are a spine-connected, breath-fueled, energy-anchored, vision-guided human. A tuning fork for frequency, a transmitter of order in a world of distortion. And once that energy flows from base to brow, you are not just awakened, you are online. At the crown of your spine, just above your skull, there's no bone, no muscle, no mind, just space. And in that space lives something ancient, not a concept, not a belief, but a reality. That you are not just a body, you are a current. And now that current has completed its climb, from base to brow, from survival to sight, from suppression to sovereignty. This is not a mystical metaphor. This is the architecture of awakening. They called it the ladder to heaven, the Sushumna channel, the tree of life, the staff of Hermes. Every tradition had its symbol. All of them pointed to the same truth. Your spine was built to carry God force, the divine intelligence that turns potential into embodiment. And now that you've felt it, there's no turning back. Because once this current rises, the illusion doesn't just look fake, it becomes intolerable. The distractions feel hollow, the drama feels distant, the noise transparent. You stop reaching outward for validation because your center is no longer missing. It's active, and in that activation, you become something rare, a human who's not just awake, but embodied. And here's the paradox. The higher you rise, the deeper you root. You don't float away into fantasies. You anchor into truth. Your life becomes simple, clean, direct, because you no longer follow signs. You become the signal. And that signal doesn't shout, it vibrates in your presence, in your posture, in your stillness. You walk into a room and change the frequency, not because you're special, but because your spine is online. The very thing they tried to suppress has become your transmission line. So now, here's the question. What would your life look like if you trusted the intelligence rising inside you, more than the world screaming outside you? Drop it in the comments. Your truth might be the map someone else has been waiting for. And if this opened something in you, this was never a video. It was a reminder. And the map? It's been inside you all along. Let's keep going. The next video will show you what happens when this current starts to shape your reality.